Hello, welcome to True Hoop with me, Jarod, Hector, and Henry Abbott. How are you, sir?
Good, man. How are you?
I am great. David Thorpe is in jolly old England.
He can't handle the Valentine's Day, right? It's too hot.
Enjoying himself. Although, let me rephrase that. I hope he's enjoying himself. We both love David dearly. David has a way of sometimes being curmudgeon-y, and I'm just wondering if he's able to just all right, man, I'm just in England, they may not have the thing that you want just heated the right way, it's just fine, it's okay. We're in London, just do the
I
thing.
think I feel very bullish about this trip. Because when he goes with his brothers,
They're in charge.
They laugh. Well, when the Thorpes are together, they just giggle the whole time, which is always a win. But secondly, do you recall during one of our meetings, I mentioned this place where they do karaoke with a live band?
Yeah.
And David
He sure did.
up. And I'm like, if that's the vibe, we're good.
We're good.
We're gonna be I bet they're having a blast. I don't think he's one of the recommendations that I got. I asked some family members and stuff where was it a chamber music place, and I didn't even share it because I don't think that's what they're doing. I think they're doing.
Yeah, you don't want that. You don't want chamber music.
They're doing
my
mixed
guy.
drinks.
Yeah, you're doing pub crawls, man. You're going to have a pint at the local pub. It's fine. Do that.
Yeah, or dancing. Honestly, the Thorpes dance.
They do. They
dance.
Mm-hmm.
That's a. It's hard to have a bad time when you're dancing.
We know one thing he will not be doing. He will not be watching any football. That will not be happening.
Nor the All-Star game.
He definitely won't be watching.
Yeah, that's why they're going away this weekend, right? Is because there's nothing to watch in David's view.
Avoid the All-Star game. We'll get to the All-Star game in a minute. You had a fun little oddity, as you titled, that you wanted to start the show off with.
I'm sure everybody saw at least the end of that Mavericks win over the Warriors.
Crazy.
Which was
Kyrie,
fun.
what a game. Woo.
Kyrie's fantastic. And it was sort of fun because there's been a little bit of upset in Dallas. I don't know if you're aware.
Oh, they might be mad about something. I wonder what.
It felt like a touch of healing. Max Christie had a big couple of free throws. And it felt like a little bit of Dallas gets to fall for its team again. But it's already weird to see Clay in a Dallas uniform at all, but especially against Steph and Draymond, right? That was weird. And a little bit of their brain, cognitive dissonance. Then, of course, there's Jimmy Butler in a Warriors uniform. But then mostly, though, as I tuned in, first seeing it on my phone, it's like the Warriors are wearing these alt uniforms that look to me a lot like Rockets uniforms.
I agree. Yes, old school Rocket uniforms. They did. They sure did.
I was like, okay, that's one weird step too many for me. What the fuck are the Warriors doing in Rockets unis?
Well, what's interesting? It's funny. It's interesting that you mentioned that because, of course, these alternate uniforms in City Edition and this, that, and the third is just another money grab, right? Another way to be like, here, buy this favorite uniform of your team. And look, I'm not one of these get off my lawn dudes, but it's do we really need all this shit? You wear your home whites and your road whatever and have one alternate uniform and let's just roll with this thing, man. Really unnecessary. But
there is a branding thing, right? Like sports leagues have big, meaningful brands. Those logos are repeated a billion times, maybe literally, right? I don't know how many times there's actually a Warriors logo somewhere on planet Earth. It's probably all those shirts, all those whatever. They have it on their envelopes. These are big brands. You get to tinker with it a little, 1% to 2% without screwing up the way it's identified in our soul, which they paid a lot of money for, right? And but you don't have to screw with it infinitely. At some point, we forget what the main core one was, right? And anyway, yeah, I'm with you.
It's just weird. You mentioned, and I'm not laughing at you, Dallas fans, but there's some healing that needs to go on there, going on Dallas. And I was like, oh, I wonder if we want to have sort of quote unquote a last word on the Luka trade, although there won't be a last word until decades from now when the actual truth comes out. And I just want to start it from here, Henry, just strictly right off the bat. This, assuming just in a vacuum that this is just what happened and what was put out there about Luka being fat and all that stuff, true, whatever. You still traded a 25-year-old in his prime, consecutive first-team All-NBA or perennial All-MVP candidate who just took you to the NBA freaking finals, okay? That decision in a vacuum, right, with the haul you got back is a fireable offense, right? It just is. That's oh, what the fuck are you doing, my guy? Out of here. That's just negligence. But you and I believe Nico's not dumb. That's not he wouldn't just do that just because he's like, I feel like doing the wildest thing imaginable today. We think there's more to the story, but that's just being my point. Is that, guys? That's a move that literally, as David said, you're certifiably insane. Like, you need to get locked up for doing something like that.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how it plays out. The way that the cap, so right now we're in this moment where cap space is almost non-existent, right? So they're going to be, I think, I don't know where we landed at the trade deadline, but something like 2 teams will have
Pistons, I think, and like maybe one other team.
I forget. Are the Nets going to have?
That's have a ton of cap space this summer. Yep,
yeah,
a ton.
But so, it could be that we're headed to a luxury tax environment where having long supermax contracts is actually not great. Right. And it could be that the Mavs decided not to do that in a very reasonable, sober way. Right. Especially if you think the guy's not going to make it performing at a high level through that deal. Right. Like, kind of the worst thing to have in the league right now is a $55 million contract for someone who's not playing. Right.
Yep. Fact.
Which is a very real possibility. I mean, actually, I'll fucking guarantee Luka will do that. Right. Like,
yeah, that's true.
I don't know how many games he's already done it, but
this year.
So he'll have a $70 million contract and not play. And just how many games will that be will ultimately determine if Nico was smart or not, right? But yeah, I think my safest thing I would insinuate in this conversation is, like, Nico just did this himself?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, exactly, right. He was just like, yeah, guys, you know what I want to do? I just feel like trading away Luka Doncic today.
No. It's just signing him is... Actually, I had this conversation with a guy in the league, like, but, so I know that Las Vegas Sands is a giant. I think it has like 40,000 employees.
That's a lot of people and employees.
And that's only part of what Miriam Adelson does, right? Like, she has a lot to worry about. But even if you were like putting together your like analysis, I think it's called a SWOT.
Yep, strength, weakness. Right? Yeah, for sure.
Before you purchase the Mavericks, you would look at this $500 million Luka deal as like the biggest decision,
correct?
Even before you close, right? And then every time he would be, belching with a hangover or whatever the thing would happen, if she were in the room, her eyes would meet Nico's, and she'd be like,
"Yeah, this is a problem."
Like, $500 million is still $500 million, even if you have much
many
bigger
billions
fish to fry, right? Like, I could see that you would get a little antsy about that next summer decision, right? Like,
billionaires do not like large cash expenditures. Like, that is not their favorite thing. Like, on things that they are uncertain about. On things they are uncertain about what the return is going to be, right?
Yeah.
Like, if it's a sure thing, fine. But not a sure thing, I don't know about this.
Yeah. And we'll see. I mean, like, these. We'll see. I mean, we'll see. It's the thing that seems like a fireable offense if he were really doing it out of step with his bosses, which he would have to happen to be fired.
Right.
The thing that'd be fireable to me would be not shopping.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
like trading him might be great.
Right. But just you went to one place and got that one deal. Like, that's just bad. Right. Yes.
Yeah. It's weird. Yeah. David's, Franz Wagner Orlando proposal, like,
way better. Way better. Way better than what they got back in return.
Yeah.
But Dallas fans, just listen, I know it's hard at the moment, but look, you still got Kyrie, who's pretty special, right? Does some pretty awesome things. When AD plays, is pretty good, right? Like, you're all right. You're okay.
Mostly, I just feel like I'm not going to tell you it's okay. I'm going to tell you it's done. Like,
well, there's also that.
Like you got in a car accident. Like, we all wish you hadn't gotten in a car accident.
Right.
Like, we really, really do. I'm so sorry.
Right.
Like, we just can't spend our lives imagining the world that doesn't exist. Right. It's like, it's hard things occur to all of us, unfortunately. And the prize goes to those who adjust fastest. Right.
That's it. And that's what you guys got to do. Adjust. Speaking of adjusting, Henry, the NBA was really in a great position the last 2 weeks because of this Luka Doncic trade, in that it dominated the sports media news during Super Bowl week, which the NBA never does that. Nothing cuts through Super Bowl week, like literally nothing, except when you trade a 25-year-old, 5-time first-team All-NBA, perennial All-MVP MVP candidate. That will cut through, and he goes to one of the league's marquee franchises, arguably its marquee franchise in the Lakers. And you said in our group chat, wow, like the NBA really is dominant. And it did. Like it cut through all the Super Bowl noise. But you felt in our chat, you're like, if I was the NBA, I'd have Luka front row at the Super Bowl doing something. So 100 and however many million eyeballs are on him. So we keep that going. But the NBA were not able to capitalize on it for whatever reason. He's got to be in LA. I don't know. But they didn't. And we were like, that's a missed opportunity for this league. And it made me think, Henry, about, what are the things the NBA can do to capitalize on these moments that it has? Because it often has these kinds of like, ooh, but there's no mechanism in place to like scale it or ramp it or like, can we convert this now into more people caring about our game?
I mean, I was being a little bit of a dick. Like I don't like, sometimes it's fun to like tap into your like lizard brain, or you're just like, if I didn't care about anybody, like what, what would be I'm trying to think like I run the NBA because that's how they think. You know what I mean? Just freaking put Luke on a plane and stick him for sure. Courtside. What do they call it?
Field level. Field
level. Mm-hmm. Like he would have gotten a lot of FaceTime, right? Like, he would have joined Taylor Swift in the little rotation, and then everyone would then guaranteed Tom Brady would be talking about Luka for a while, and then I guess what would come out of that is elevated TV ratings when the Lakers limp into the playoffs, right? But they probably have that. Like I think that like the finances of the league follow the mind share, right? And they do have the mind share. They moved. I wish I could remember better, but like if they moved the trade deadline, which used to be after All-Star. It used to be All-Star weekend was like later as the weekend wore on, all of the front office people would like disappear and you wouldn't see them because they were really talking about the trade deadline, which would be following. But I think the NBA sees their trade chatter as one of their core products. And so they moved it to Super Bowl week, which was brilliant.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? It doesn't cost them anything.
Yeah.
Makes All-Star less weird because a lot of times the All-Star would be like, this player's rolling out about to celebrate this thing, but everyone kind of knows that Woj said he's probably going to Brooklyn or whatever.
Exactly.
So but it did work. It totally worked. They got they're in a lot of people's heads. There are a bunch of celebrities who are now going to try to go to Laker games, and those Laker games, and the networks are going to try to get those Laker games, and there's going to be a little more sizzle and stuff. And it's a drop in the bucket, but I do feel like it's this Luka LA thing ultimately is probably pretty sexy for what has been a pretty surprisingly boring team, given that they have had LeBron and AD.
And a good team. They're well above 500. Like they're in the top 6 in the West. Like
who'd they just lose to though?
They just lost to the Jazz yesterday. Yes.
Oh yeah,
listen, that's a clearly limping into All-Star break play right there.
Yeah.
It's funny. So you mentioned Luka on the Lakers now. That game against his first game got put on ESPN, and the ESPN just put out a thing yesterday. Like it's so exciting. Oh, drew 2.5 million, like highest rated like game in the same time slot, and like 2.5 million is about maybe the second highest number you'd get on Christmas Day, right? Like that's around somewhere in that range, which for the NBA is good, right?
Yeah,
but for sport, not great, right? I mean, an NFL regular season game between the two worst teams in the NFL would crush 2.5 million. Like,
no one's in the NFL league. Like, the NFL is just alone in that, right? Like, then there's all the other sports, but among the other sports,
it's
good.
Very, very good among the other sports.
Yeah.
And I think, look, I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, and I think we might have talked about it on True. The idea of Hard Knocks is a popular show that people like to watch. Like, what if you had like a show, like a Hard Knocks style show around the trade deadline, or like the trade deadline is like, that's like this is a peak moment in the show, like the mid-season finale of like a normal television show. Would that help generate more interest, right? Because it's like, oh, you fall in love with this guy, and like, oh man, he's trying so hard, and then next thing you know, it's like, wait, why is he got pulled off of his team? Wait, he's gonna get sent to Cleveland now, or not? Cleveland's good now, but some other dregs city that like the team's not good. I think that would work. I just don't know that the NBA and the NBPA want that kind of stuff out there for whatever reason.
Yeah, think about every single time you ever see the NBA in media, in like movies or TV shows, right? Was it super saccharine? Was it Ahmad Rashad and Summer Sanders being like, everything is wonderful? Yes, it was. It always is. Except for the one exception is that that Lakers show had Lakers branding in it
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
orgies.
Which, I mean, but those things happened. I mean,
Yeah, but I mean, but basically, if you use that NBA licensing, then the NBA gets to like
Yeah.
this is the way the
Yeah.
League of Lawyers goes, right? They're going to screen it and they're going to not approve their license to be used in anything interesting.
Yeah.
Like they literally don't believe like so like that Hard Knocks show and 1,000 other shows that have been proposed through the years. I have proposals on my own on this hard drive of this computer I'm using like for shows like this from 12 years ago where
they were like, get the fuck out of here.
they just don't want like they literally don't understand the elements of good storytelling. And when they get to the part where there's an actual struggle or a real obstacle or a villain or
cut that out.
drug addiction, all these things that are very real, you know, gambling now, all of these things are very real. Like they just don't do it. You know, that's where like, you know, this is why the Formula One show actually has gotten a lot more saccharine.
Yeah.
But like in the early seasons, they were like they were fighting.
Yeah.
Through TV.
Well, look,
spicy.
Henry, conflict is at the heart of every good story.
Yeah.
That is why, because we as humans, we can understand. Yeah, I feel that, right? I remember I told the story before when I was on the floor, and I think it was Aaron Aflalo, when he got traded. And like, I saw the staff come out and like take him off during his warm-ups, and I was like, what the hell is going on? I have no idea. And I just beelined and followed them all back into the tunnel underneath. And then he comes out and it learns he gets traded, and he's like talking to us, and he's like, yeah, I'm getting on a plane to Cleveland. And like his voice is cracking, and like I'm not like, yay, let's like, you know, put this out here for like our trauma porn addiction or whatever. But I'm like, that is, someone can feel that and emote and be like, shit. And now you're invested. Like, well, what happens now when he lands in Cleveland? Where's he gonna live? What, right? You're into that story. But the NBA is just like, nah, fuck that.
Well, I mean, you know, I don't want to just talk for 6 hours right now, but like, so David Stern took over a league that he was at that time when America had never embraced a black dominated product in media, right? And so his technique was stolen from Disney. He was like, we're going to not have these be fully realized humans. We're going to make characters and we'll have like 6 or 7 and they will be, you know, like they won't be themselves. They'll be characters themselves, like Disney characters, you know, so like Michael Jordan is like the dominant flyover you won or whatever, and on and on. And it absolutely worked, right? So when David Stern retires, he's like, you know, they said that I could never make a black dominated product so popular, but I was right. And, you know, he's a complicated character to all of us, but like he did in fact make this a mainstream product. Great. But that's still where they are.
Yeah.
They still want Aaron Aflalo to not be a real 3-dimensional human, which I think feeds a lot of problems, including the fact that, like, in a way that feels kind of racist to me, fans generally just don't accept the idea that our players are tired or overworked, right? It's just like not the Disney characters don't get tired.
No, they're always smiling and running around. Like,
yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, I know we could do like literally a 6-hour show on this. Like, there's so much.
Then
there.
we get tired.
we would for sure be tired. And honestly, I do get tired, but as you know, it's born out of we love this league and love this sport and feel like it could be doing so much more to endear itself to more people, to be like, wow, I'm invested in this thing. Like, and I think we can, like, humans can handle it. You can handle people being 3D. Like, it's okay.
Well, you want the best storytellers telling stories in your medium, right? So like I talk about the Queen's Gambit all the time. Like,
love that
the Queen's Gambit was an addiction story set in chess. The struggle was addiction, right? And like, you know, PTSD kind of, right? And there are those stories for fucking real in the NBA, probably on every team. And we don't tell them. And it's like, well, what an L. Like, you know, that's probably the most popular thing that's ever happened for chess. Right? Like, and whoever, I don't know who made the Queen's Gambit, who wrote it, who directed it, but like, these are the best of the best, right? They made the globe addicted to a chess show.
Literally.
Like, why are none of those people making the world addicted to a basketball show? Like, well, because we won't let them tell the addiction part, which is the part that makes it a winning show, right? Like, that's the part that people are excited to see how it turns out, right? This is her struggle. So yeah, we don't have real stories of struggle in the NBA, even though it's a place of people who, I'm not here to tell you it's like rife with addiction. I'm just telling you that, like, you know, NBA players are, to me, super heroic in overcoming struggles, like amazingly.
Yes.
But like, we don't articulate the nature of most of those struggles. Like Aaron Aflalo, like has to have a whole new life in Cleveland starting tomorrow. Like, it's so fucking hard, but he's good at it. Nice job, Aaron.
Right.
You know, like,
Nick, I just like but they'll have me telling a certain kind of story though, right? Oh, grew up super poor and now made it and is rich. Like okay, like we've heard that story a billion times, and you're not even telling the actual parts of that story, right? You're cutting out so much other stuff just to get from point A to point B. It's just,
or it's like, honestly, I swear to God, like half the questions, All-Star is rife with this, where it's like, you know, Luka, how great is it to get to learn from LeBron? Like, like they're gonna ask that. Like, what if his answer is, I fucking hate that guy?
Yeah, literally.
Which is totally possible.
Sure.
Like, he's the bossiest motherfucker in the history of the game, right?
Sure
like,
is.
He's mad about where I put my shoes down. Like, and he yells at me about everything, right? Like, we don't even allow it to be an option for Luka to discuss, right? And like, anyway, so I feel like there's like, you know, the one narrative we have is like, you're just so lucky, right? Like, tell me how lucky you are. How great is it to be here in the Bay Area for also? How great is it to get to play for this coach ever? And like, I feel like we're so much more honest just to be like, what's the hardest part of your job?
Yeah. You're like, actually, this I'm doing right now. Like what I'm doing right now. I hate this shit. Yes, thank you.
Do you think you guys are going to lose a game on Tuesday because of all the hours you're putting in right now talking to dumb shits like me?
Probably. Yeah, probably. Oh my God.
What's keeping you from napping? Oh, the obligation to
talking to you right now. I would be sleeping.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I can't. Anyway, in that vein, Henry, you had a piece come out today, Low on Sports, on troop.com. Everybody, of course, should be a subscriber. And I loved it because it's connected to all of this about, you know, Super Bowl, the NBA, football, like sports, right? How that is the thing, right? We all fall in love with sports because of its visceral nature, the poetic balance between, right? That's why we love it. Yet, we get less and less of that and more of fucking bullshit, right? Like the CarMax, blah, 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 whatever. It's like, I don't like care about any of this shit. I just want to watch the game, and I want the players to be at their best, to do all the things that get at my heartstrings, that get at my limbic part of my brain, all the things that, woo, yeah. I want all of that. But as sports has gone on, Henry, we just see less and less and less and less of that. And I don't even know, like, is there a way to turn that around and go back, or are we way already, horses already out the barn door and we're done? This is just the future of sport now.
Well, I think they have to give us that, you know, sports fans, it won't happen without sports fans, right? So as long as sports fans are into it, then yeah, they're going to keep adding more CarMax sponsorships to everything, right?
Fucking CarMax.
You know, Tom Brady in the middle of the broadcast of the Super Bowl said that, you know, it's a long game. He's like, it's 4 hours and 15 minutes, which just struck me as like,
yeah, not of gameplay.
I swallow 4. It's just like not a time. I've been around sports my whole life, right? Like I like play sports. I've competed in lots of things. Like that's not an amount of time people do sports, right? Like it's like for the best marathoners in the world is 2.
Correct.
2 marathons.
Yes.
2 marathons, right?
Right.
And I was like, man, like, you know, you have to, like, Mahomes has to be up and ready to perform like over the course of 4 hours and 15 minutes, like an opera.
Yeah, pretty much.
And meanwhile, I think we all have seen these things that like the actual live gameplay for a Super Bowl is usually like 12 minutes. So that's a ratio where it's less than 5% football. So now I'm thinking like this is the analogy that I put in the story is like there's a donkey carrying a load, and like the donkey is the 4.5 minutes or 12 minutes of football, 4.5%. And the load is like so big you almost can't see the donkey.
Yep.
You know, it's just like under this thing. And that made me think about All-Star Weekend is no donkey, all load, right?
It's all load.
Particularly in what used to be called Jam Session, and now it's called Crossover, which is like, you guys, I'm telling you, if you're in the Bay Area, do not waste your money. It's $50 for an adult to get on Saturday. And the thing that strikes me as just so crazy about it is like, I mean, look, I'm sure people have a good time there. I don't want to like totally take a dump on it, but just in the structure, I think you're going to find when you get there that the biggest, physically largest area is going to be like a T-Mobile stand booth.
Right.
And like, that's not how you set things up if you actually want it to be fun for the people who go there. That's good for T-Mobile, right? And all these things seem to be, you can, every decision is complicated, and there's like, something for me, something for you, whatever. The NBA and the NFL at this stage, late stage 2025, feel like they've so much optimized for just their income.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're left with like what you have for me as a fan, as a regular fan, is, I'm not going to get into the dunk contest. I'm not going to get into the Sunday night game. I'm not going to even be able to get into like the hotel where people are staying. I'm not going to get into any of these things.
You
Like
can barely get into practice. Usually you make like an open practice. You can probably barely get into that.
yeah. What you can get into is this crossover / jam station thing where the main thing you have for me is a fucking T-Mobile like walkthrough experience. Like you have forgotten me, right? Like you calculated that you could keep getting enough out of me with giving me absolutely. It's actually you're giving me less than nothing because you're actually taking like my mind share on T-Mobile is something that you're getting paid for. Like you're taking my mind share away for your income, and like it's for that. I don't know where I stand on the 4.5 hour Super Bowl or the long NBA game full of ads or whatever, but by the time you get all the way down to the shittiest end of the spectrum to this formerly known as jam session thing, I'm like, it makes me sad to go in there. It just does. I'm like, these are good people. I look around, I like the people. I wish they had a chance to enjoy the NBA. Unfortunately, they have fucking T-Mobile. Like, what a bad use of your precious money to entertain your kid.
And you have these larger than life characters that we talked about prior to that's who we come to see. We want to interact with them in an interesting and meaningful way, not behind T-Mobile and Starry Sprite and whatever the hell other shit they got. It's like, this is what is this?
And then they'll have like, I'm sorry, I'm venting like years of hanging around these events.
Yeah.
So the other thing that happens is they'll drag like the people from other events, like they'll have like the Rising Stars practice will be in the court at jam session, right? So there'll be some kind of like excitement. There'll be some NBA players there. Then at some point, I've been to the celebrity game practice. Practice is such a not what it is,
correct.
But there's an absolute cheese ball on the mic every time. Over the top, get excited, and they'll have legitimately interesting, talented people, celebrities, people who've gone on to win Academy Awards, or for some reason the one that's in my head is Savion Glover, who's like a brilliant dancer and a very interesting man, but not in that context.
Certainly not.
When you put him there, or Don Cheadle, right? Like these are brilliant people who you'd love to have on a real show where they talk about what they really do in their craft. But in this NBA setting, it's like, how lucky are you to play? It's just like, and like everything is just in this context of like
I mean,
dumb shittery.
Wouldn't it be better if you had Don Cheadle and Kevin Durant in conversation?
Just let them talk,
right? And just talking about
like smart as hell,
right? What it's like to be like at the top of your craft in like your process, and you'll be like, wow, such similarities, of course, because you're fucking both great at what you do. Like that would be so much more interesting to people who care about, right? Versus what you just said, Cheeseball yelling about, and here comes Don Cheadle doing. It's like, what are we doing? What are we doing?
And did you happen to see like Dick Vitale came back and called a Duke game the other night?
I knew that he was, because he's battling cancer, of course, and I knew that
So there was this is a classic moment of sports media just grasping defeat from the jaws of victory, where Dick Vitale, like, they took a moment for him to be like, thank you for having me here, and tears streaming down his cheeks, and he's talking about just like how lucky he is and all the people who supported him and his family, his wife and his kids, and all the battle and how hard it was. And what really breaks his heart is that kids are dealing with this, and he's putting the rest of his life into making sure that kids don't have to deal with that. And then like,
what did they do?
Guy in the fucking suit next to him is like, just wrests the topic out of the very real thing back to like, and how lucky we are to have like Cooper Flagg and the Duke Blue Devils here, and so you can see this great young talent, blah 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 blah, like making it back into like, put the whole thing back in the box, so it's like perfectly packaged, easy, not emotionally complicated, and like you can see Dick Vitale being like, I'm covered in tears, and you're making me talk about a fucking power forward. Right? Like,
come on, man. Like, and look, you can feel however you want about Dick's like commentating and like whatever and all of that. But the one thing you cannot deny is like his emotions, and that is all real feelings of his when he's out there. Like this man loves college basketball like nobody's business.
Well, he
And
certainly loves life and not dying,
yeah,
which is what he was
all
talking
that.
about right then. Like, yeah, that was pretty relatable, I thought. It feels like sometimes sports is a contract just to be like, oh, no, we won't truly emote. There will be nothing authentic here. Trust me, it's just going to be uniforms will tell us who's good and bad. That's all. And like, maybe it's that for some people, but I don't need it to be like that. Like,
It
it's
doesn't.
just, yeah.
We have the capabilities to handle both. We're really okay. We can manage. Like we're not going to
We
melt.
probably should, because they are humans out there. We probably should understand they're humans, you know?
It's so wild. I did love it because you referenced Owen Phillips, I think, in the piece, and he had done a whole thing about the length of games and why the game starts so late, right? And it's funny because we all know this is NBA people, right? So if I turn on League Pass, I want to watch a Grizzlies game, and it's like an 8:00 Eastern tip that it says on my phone. I know it's not an 8:00 Eastern tip. I know it's probably not going to tip till like 8:15 probably. So I know I can do a bunch of other things and like, right? But if you're someone who's trying to get like, I would be like, well, wait, why isn't this game starting at the time you told me when it's going to start? What is all this shit that we're doing ahead of time? But
there's a funny, like, the networks always want to. So like the networks will be trying to add Laker games to the lineup right now, and the people who will most hate the network adding Laker games will be the people who do the local stuff, because when ESPN or Turner arrives, they just get extremely bossy.
Yep.
Right, they start determining when's the national anthem, when's the all this stuff. Right, suddenly is not the business of the people who live there. And and Owen Phillips. So he had two relevant stories. One is about what time does the game start, and he found that on average ESPN games start 14 minutes after the scheduled time, whereas other networks are not as much. Which makes me think like, okay, so I think one big point to me is like, the rule book says when the game starts. Starts at 8, but it doesn't start at 8 if ESPN won't start at 8:14. Right?
Correct.
It's like similarly, years ago I did a story about traveling, and I ultimately end up with a headline from the head of referees saying we really don't reference the rule book. And they ended up changing the rule. I'm very proud of this project. Like they literally changed the rule of traveling because of my work. And they told me it was because of my work. But they just didn't reference the rulebook. And the rulebook also says super clearly the timeouts are 90 seconds long.
They are way longer than that. And I know it because I go to arenas and I watch, right? Like, especially if it's a national game on ESPN or Turner. To your point, I love this part of the story. Talk about the guy who sits courtside watching the broadcast, who then lets the referee know, okay, now you can say it's time to play again.
Yeah, if you look, I mean, it's been a while. Things have changed a lot with technology. But sometimes even on the broadcast, you can see there's a person who will sit courtside and raise his or her hand straight up in the air all the time. Then there's watching a TV, and when it comes back from broadcast, they'll drop their hand, and then the ref will inbound the ball. In high school, a ref wears a watch and says like, "Oh, that was." I think there's some. When I was in high school, there were some 120-second timeouts. So but whatever. Like, oh, that's 120 seconds. Inbound the ball, right? And referees don't wear watches because they don't decide when the timeout's over because they're not important enough. They only know the rule book, dumb shits. The money will tell you when the game starts again, right? And that's this is why we have games in the Emirates. This is why, like, if you look at like whatever people rank how corrupt a nation is, it's like the most corrupt nation or close, and most. But that's the logo. It's on the referees. Like, oh, this is what happens when the money, like, my point isn't that I think the league does a good job making money, but which is great. But the point is that sometimes it nips at the core of the thing, right? Sometimes the stuff that the donkey's carrying hurts the donkey, right? And this is where I feel like we're getting certainly at NBA crossover jam session, the sport part has been fully devoured and is no longer even present. Like in the game, it's like, I'm just saying attention. Like, let's pay a little attention here. And a little bit to the Owen Phillips, the newest story he just published today on Thursday. They talk about referee reviews being the reason that games are so slow now. And in fairness, let's point out that's a non-cash event. That is not a money-making event. They're slowing down games just for that. But I can tell you the history of this. So he talks about Kevin Pelton says we should make reviews maximum of 30 seconds. And then Owen Phillips says he'd take it a step further, get rid of challenges and reviews altogether, I'm quoting him. It's a time suck that marginally increases the overall accuracy of at most a couple calls a game at the expense of making the games themselves noticeably less enjoyable to watch. According to the NBA's own data, just 61% of challenges this year have resulted in an overturned call. Is that number high enough to justify the disruption of the game? So I think here's what happened here. We all grew up. I don't know how old you are listening to this, but like you and I, Jarod, grew up in a world where there was none of this, and referees just blew a certain number of calls a game, and that's fine. Then
There it
everybody
was.
got slow-mo replay on your DVR, and then we had an unbearable period of time when several times a year, SportsCenter would be led by super irate Stephen A. Smith or whoever, mad about something that was clearly a game-deciding blown call. And the absurd reality was that everybody in the world knew in real time it was blown except the referees. We can't go back to that. It's not.
Nope.
I'm not with Owen on this. That's too stupid.
Yeah, can't do it.
But then the NBA discussed a lot of different ways they might fix that, and they built this Secaucus Instant Replay Center, which is the place where now league officials do know in real time what's right and what's wrong. The only part that's stupid to me is that they force, and this is only because of fans, right? They force the referee to walk to the side and pretend to call it in the arena.
Right.
That's time consuming.
Right.
I think we just have to have no replay on site. But we're just going to call it they're going to tell the referee what it is, and we're going to have video of everything on the website, wherever. SportsCenter wants it in the arena. Just play the video if you have to. If anybody ever questions it, everything's on video from 12 angles. Like, they cannot get in the habit of rigging games. But, like, just call it. Just tell the referee in the earpiece, which I think they already do, and say, no, his foot was on the line. And just call it in real time. And then if anybody questions it, we got it. In the replay center, Jarod, when you go in there, they have it.
Oh yeah,
every angle.
There's
like,
so many. I'm like, oh my god, all the monitors and like superimposed. Like you can see everything.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
It's a dream of how you enforce the rules. So I feel like the only thing that we're doing is the little off-Broadway theater of like, oh, all the decisions are being made by this human in front of me. And it's like, no, they aren't. You just need them to look like that, and that's time consuming.
Well, so that's the point, right? Because then it's like, because the NBA has to keep the farce going. If the referees on site still matter when they don't, because we matter because we can see it all right here.
They're sitting, and there's the boss of the referee. In many cases, it's a supervisor, right? So literally, your boss is in a room with like walls of. Like at the time they built it, the internet company told them it was the biggest like pipe of internet connectivity that they'd ever installed anywhere. Right?
I mean, that makes sense.
They're piping in, and then they say this, like they say there's like 30 or 40 cameras all around like every arena built in.
Probably.
In addition to like what the TV networks bring in. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's put a pin in that. But like, so you know how many things happen in those arenas where those cameras would be useful that they don't use that footage for?
Correct. Correct.
Anyway, but so they have all these angles and super zoomed in and blah, blah. Like, so your boss is watching a way better view than you have and is on an earpiece to you. And you're gonna be like, no. Show it to me. If you're a referee, like, really? Sometimes you can see over their shoulder and they're not even on the right play. Right? Sometimes
I mean, that's the whole farce of this. I'm like, what are we even doing? Like, you're not even like you're pretending. It's like, oh, rush to get them. I'm like, looking at the thing. Let's just stop. Like, stop the game.
Yeah, it's not a good environment for like video study. You know what I mean?
Certainly not.
Yeah.
You mentioned on gameplay how 4 hours. It's like it's back-to-back marathons, right? One of the things, and look, I've said it before, European football is not perfect, but one of the things I enjoy about European football is the game. Gameplay is what I get, right?
Yeah.
There is no commercial break. Nope. We're just going. Then the half is over. Then you get whatever. Then we come back. We're starting up again. And the halftime is short, man. It is not as lengthy. Like, I love that. And no breaks for silly ass Carmax or whatever. Nope. We're just rolling through this thing. It makes watching the sport so much more enjoyable.
There's a lot of sport in that sport. Like, that's just how it is. Yeah, you don't have to. I think I might be sensitive to this, but like, I think we need a word for like being over marketed to. But like, I get exhausted.
Yeah.
Right. I'm just exhausted. Like, oh my gosh, I cannot take another.
Yeah.
When that person like takes the mic in the third quarter, like get us excited again about the CarMax thing, I'm like,
no, please,
I need you to stop.
Literally, I'm like, can you just not talk
Like,
right now? Like, just
like,
don't.
oh my God.
Like, just
I'm
don't.
not gonna stand and clap or fucking
Right.
CarMax. Like,
literally, fucking
ever.
CarMax. What are we
or whatever
doing?
it is.
Fucking CarMax people. Like,
Yeah.
I just can't. Listen, I encourage everybody to go read Henry's article. Henry, listen, ultimately, right? So we talked about the money and like the people who pay the bills get to decide when the game starts. ESPN decides, nope, we're going to start at 7:14 today because we need whatever, right? Because the airspace leading up to the start of the game is valuable. They sell that to advertisers and CarMax and whoever the fuck, right?
Yeah.
And the point of all this is that the people who make these decisions, sports and the point of view of the fan seems to be not on their top list of priorities. One of Henry's favorite things he says to me is, winning might be like the 6th most important thing to this owner, 8th. Like it's not a priority, but it isn't the number 1 priority. And that's the thing with these people. And your last paragraph I thought was great, where you say the invisible hand in today's economy no longer seems like an unseen tide rising all boats, but a tidal wave of finance, the kind of money that opens the doors to sports' inner sanctum. If she wants to attend anything this weekend, Miriam Adelson will sit wherever she wants. Her empire of gambling and influence is so vast and complex that as of today, literally no one in the NBA can say why the Mavericks traded Luka to the Lakers. Amazingly, sports are pretty ancillary to the people at the heart of sports, such that a 6'9" star in his prime apparently looked to the Mavericks decision makers small compared to the stacks of Las Vegas Sands' next move. Like, I mean, that's it in a nutshell right there, right? That's really all of it. Like,
I feel a little bit like, and when Harry Met Sally, there's a part where Bruno Kirby's like, "Oh my God, that's the first time anyone's ever quoted me to me." Yeah. I mean, I think that's right. Like it's so big. I mean, just the sheer number of dollars that are flowing around are like just, Luka's kind of,
right. Luka cannot be the primary thing. Like
it might be, it might not be, hard to say. Like
on her line item, he is not number 1, right? Like he's probably somewhere on there, but not the most important thing she's focused on, right?
And if we look up, like we're so obsessed with sports, everyone who cares about sports, like they can't imagine that it's like, like from where we are, you look up to see Nico, and then Nico looks up to see what's his name, Francis Dumont or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Patrick Dumont,
yeah. Her son-in-law.
He looks up, he sees Miriam Adelson, right? Like, and it seems like we're in like a Christmas tree shaped device, where at the top would be like the most focus on the tree. But actually you were looking in like through a skylight, and she's off in the sky, looking at the whole world. And she's doing all of these things, right?
That is it in a nutshell. It is, as fans, and it's part of the bargain you might call even a Faustian bargain, right? Is the Peter Pan syndrome we have, where like all that matters is the team winning. The owner is just like me. He or she just happens to have billions of dollars. So they would react the same way I would. And I'm here to tell you, sorry, kids, not the case. A lot of them don't care about actual, like that's not they're not thinking how we are, like, oh my God, we're on a 2-game losers streak. That's none of that. They're not thinking of any. She is literally off in the clouds, surveying the entire world and figuring out how can I move these pieces on the board to suit my interest and what I need. Now, if the Mavericks benefit from that, great for you guys. But that's not what she's leading with. The Mavericks benefiting from whatever it is she's trying to do.
We're certainly not Mavericks fans.
Mavericks fans, correct.
Yeah. I remember the first NBA finals I went to were in Indianapolis, and at that time, I think it was called Conseco Fieldhouse. It was brand new, and it was like the most basketball focused thing. And this is Indiana.
They love
basketball. Hoosiers. This is like, and by the time I like had been there 24 hours, I had been like every taxi driver article. It's like everything was just about like, you don't understand, this Reggie Miller, this town, this, all this stuff. Right. And like, and then only, and like, and Mr. Simon made it possible, right? Herb Simon made it all possible. Like, he lives in Beverly Hills. Like, it took me, I was there for a while. Then I'm like, well, where's this, magic?
This benevolent Herb
Oh, he's
Simon.
not here. Yeah. He's in Beverly fucking Hills.
Right. And the defense rests. Like what? These people, like again. So like, and again, just to put a bow on this. So this idea that everybody has around, like, oh, you people are just conspiracy nuts and whatever. I will like to point out, and not about tooting our own horn, we are literally the only people in media who have uttered the name Miriam Adelson. It's almost like every other mainstream media is allergic. Like they cannot say her name. Like we don't. Nope. This is Nico is an idiot. Like okay, if that's the story you want to roll with, I guess cool. You do you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, all right, folks. We'll be back after a brief commercial break. All right, Henry. Speaking of money in sports, one of the things that is problematic is sports leagues and their cozying up to gambling dollars, right? And that was the FanDuel, DraftKings, all these sports books, and that was a flood of money that came into pro sports. And now you literally cannot watch any professional sports or even college for that matter matchup without some kind of here's the line and what's your blah 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 parlay and this that. And it's like, I mean, it's kind of predatory, I would even say, in many ways, right? They're really pushing this stuff down your throat. And the Athletic had an article today about players and sort of some of the online abuse they take from people who gamble and they player mess up their parlay and this type of thing. And I thought it was an interesting piece because it's not like nobody could see this coming, right? Like, of course you knew once you open this up, you were going to have people who take things too far, who attack players for couldn't you grab one more rebound? Why'd you shoot that? I mean, whatever, all these things that mess up parlays and point spreads and all that and cause people to lose significant money, right? Gambling is a real disease and people who are addicted to this, like it's a real problem. And I think also, Henry, the way that like these sportsbook do it with like, oh, your first 5 bets are free and you get $100 if you like all that shit. Like that is all designed like to really keep you, and it's already on your phone, which we're already addicted to anyway, right? So it's like double addiction. Your phone and the gambling. Now you're never leaving, right? It's just bad. And the league in the article, because it talked about players complaining about, what fans say to them and stuff about their families and all that, and I'm gonna kill you and all these horrible things you can imagine. The article says the league has processes in place that allow players to report incidents to their teams and or the league office, an NBA spokesperson told The Athletic. NBA security also monitors social media for threatening messages and works with teams to identify persons responsible and, if necessary, involve law enforcement. Multiple players who talked to The Athletic have since said they weren't aware of the protocols in place. And I was like, what? Doesn't sound like... And look, some of that could be the start of every year. They have these meetings and they're like, all right, guys, from the league, we have this. And, it's like when you start a new job or you're in school and like it's the shit you don't care about and you're like zoned out and you're just not paying attention because you're like, I don't care about that stuff. But I think to me, Henry, that's an important thing. And like the fact that players are saying we didn't know about this, like, well, maybe the league, if they were going to take all this gambling money, you need to do a better job of educating these guys about if something happens, here's what I want you to do. And I don't know if the league done that.
Yeah, I am very suspicious of how ardently they police this. I think about when the Donaghy scandal happened. In the middle of it, there was a moment where it honestly seemed like the league might go out of business. And
you mean Tim Donaghy, the only lone ref who was all by himself, who did this all on his own with no interference from anywhere or anyone else? That guy? Okay.
Right. You're taking a point of view that was articulated by David Stern in this press conference, right? And like I remember thinking, but like at the beginning, there's a transcript. You can look at the beginning of that. David Stern listed off. He's like, we have experts watching this from like the NSA, the FBI. Like, he named like every agency you've ever heard of, and just was like overwhelming with the idea that the NBA is just like all over this stuff. Then eventually they commissioned the Pedowitz report, right, which was like a massive investigation. When that came out and it articulated like what the situation was before, none of those 3-letter agencies were mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Like they didn't have those
lies,
right? It's just the shit that you say to get out of a jam, right? He's a lawyer in court, right? He's like, he's winning the argument, and he did. He won the argument. But yeah, so to me, when I see this, like, oh, we have all these. Actually, like another one is like, I mean, whatever. We talked about the marijuana program. I always wanted to be like, the marijuana program. I think it does really exist, but like,
Right.
are you familiar with marijuana
Well,
programs?
it's like,
Like,
yeah,
like, does
it's
that
just
make
first of
sense to
all,
you?
it's what from what I know of it, Henry. Like they know when the test is coming. Like it's
Some
just
cases,
and
yeah.
it's twice a year or once during the season and once in the off season, I believe. Right, that's how it goes. I'm like, and they know ahead of time when like that doesn't sound like testing to me. Like
Well, yeah, so the testing is not great, but like, and it's very limited. But more than that, like, if you fail 5 times, then you get in the marijuana program, which is like, okay, this is a ongoing
fail five.
marijuana counseling program. Like, I mean, I'm not suggesting that I know
Right,
that it doesn't exist,
right.
and actually, I'm positive that on planet Earth there are such things, but they're probably mostly at churches, right?
They're not in the NBA.
Like, what are you going to talk to NBA players about for hours and hours? Like,
Right.
guys, this is a bong. Mm-mm. Like, seriously, like, what are you going to do? Anyway, you guys still not doing marijuana? Okay, good. Like, I just don't, I'm not familiar with like a long-term marijuana program.
Oh my
And the
god.
NBA, like, trots for a while, they would try it all the time. Like, it was just a
Yeah,
thing they did. And I'm like,
yeah,
are
yeah.
you really, like, I forget who failed, who was in it, but I'm like, where's that guy really going? Who's he really talking to? Like, what's really, anyway, same with this, like your big anti-gambling program.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
what's like,
Yeah,
is
what?
it really
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah. Meanwhile, the second, like from the first second this was discussed as like a thing that could come to the NBA, I was standing at the Tech Summit All Star next. There was an NBA GM. He's still an NBA GM. Standing right near me. I'm like, hey, what do you think about this? And he's like, I'm worried because like all my players have like cousins, nephews, uncles, someone who just needs a bunch of money from them, and they're usually have to get pretty good at saying no. But what if they say just get 6 or more rebounds? Might they do that? Like, and at the same time, I know Justin Wolfers was a bookie before he became an award-winning economist, and he's like, the way that and everybody knows this in the gambling world, if you want to keep this kind of corruption out of sports gambling, you have to let people gamble on wins and losses because you can't get athletes to throw that very easily.
Mhm.
But if you have dumb shit like who gets 6 more rebounds, then
Mhm.
that's exactly where it's unpoliceable. It's unpoliceable. And so if you can put 10 grand on whether or not your cousin's going to get 6 assists tonight
Mhm.
or under 6 assists,
Yeah, yeah,
now we got a problem. Like, so they set it up in a way that the industry knows is rife
yeah,
with corruption.
yeah. In that article, and I encourage people to read it on The Athletic, players get asked by fans online, "What's your Venmo? You owe me money for blowing this parlay." Like, oh, like, and it's and that's some of the tamer stuff, right? But again, people who have real problems and are addicted and spend and bet large sums of money on this kind of thing, it could potentially lead to trouble. You mentioned that these arenas have cameras all over the place, and they should probably use it for other things, right? Look, we have a gun culture, sadly, in this country. And listen, people have gotten guns into places with tight security before, right? What happens if someone who is so distraught because they've literally lost everything comes to a game to exact revenge or waits outside the tunnel, whatever the situation may be, right? Because you lost me everything and now I'm angry at you. Like these are look, I don't want to make it be alarmist about it, but these are the things that you are inviting.
Or it's another reason, remember, like, I forget exactly what happened with Jahlil Okafor, like maybe getting in a fight with a fan out drinking or whatever. And like, or Charles Barkley got in a
Mm-hmm,
fight with the fan.
mm-hmm,
Like, I feel like you're giving a whole nother set of reasons for someone to just go start crap
mm-hmm,
with an
mm-hmm,
NBA player in public
mm-hmm.
or their family or their
Yeah,
whatever, yeah, it's of course, I mean, it's literally what happened in the Back to the Future when the bad people took over the future,
mm-hmm,
right? It's
yeah,
literally like it becomes a casino and they just toss people roughly into the street.
yeah.
Like,
And look, again, this is another situation where we're not giving the money back. So this is what it is. And the NBA is going to, and the NFL and whoever are going to keep taking all this money as long as they keep giving it to the leagues. They're going to do it. I mean, how
I
many arenas, Henry, are being built with sport books inside the arena?
yeah,
Like,
yeah. And it's funny, I'm not a prude about gambling. Like
right.
my grandfather was big on like teaching us how to play blackjack when I was a kid, like, and because he played and he landed on D-Day with the
Mm-hmm.
soldiers, blah, blah, blah. I more just think that we together as fans get to have a lot of say in how much of this we tolerate. And I think we probably should insist on a pretty high potency of like sports in sports
Mhm.
as opposed to
Everything else.
parlays
Yeah,
and
I agree.
just, CarMax. And
Mhm.
it just seems like, there's something that gets us, like I texted you this morning and you were running, right?
Mhm.
There's something like you had a feeling before you went running that you wanted to do this thing.
Mhm.
And that is in a way that you're similar to Anthony Edwards,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And we all shared this love of like
Mhm. Movement
not
and yeah.
just going to the office, right?
Mhm.
And this is a fun part of it. Like that fun part is at risk of it's getting diluted by a lot
Yes.
of just money
Yeah.
stuff. And I
Yeah.
feel like, some things you just got to accept and let it go. And other things I think you got to fight for a little bit. I think we might have to fight for our sports a little bit. We have to get a little more potency and purity of just like the sports part.
Yeah, no, I think you're dead on. Like you mentioned, not being prude about gambling. I'm not prude about marijuana. Like, not but it's about where. If you open it now, where are we going to end up? What is the end result here? Where are we going?
Yeah.
Right. And again, to your point, the sport is what we all came here for. Remember your earliest sport memory that made you fall in love was when you were a kid, most likely. And it's this amazing thing you saw these amazing athletes do. We get less and less of that every time I turn on a game. It's like,
and they're having meetings and they're saying like, no, they'll be fine with it.
yeah.
Right. Like, what if we start the game at 7:08? They're like, that's great. What about 7:14? Yeah, sure. They're fine. We won't lose anybody. And like, it feels a little bit like we set a boundary and I'm not advocating throwing a ball at someone's head, but like, like in baseball, it's like, oh, this is when you throw the brushback pitch, right?
Mhm.
Just make the guy step back a little, right? It's like, I feel like, hey man, like, we're gonna back you up a little here.
Yeah, just a
Like,
little bit.
it's gonna cost you a little something if you're gonna make it at 7:16.
Yeah. Yeah.
If the game's, and if
I agree.
I just feel like throw us a clean. Do you remember the Knicks had like a game without all the fanfare now and again? I forget what they called it.
Oh no, I don't remember
Well,
that.
they maybe 10 years ago they would occasionally have a night. I didn't know anything about this and just lucked into going to one of them. But it was just like they just had like a game with very little fanfare.
Oh my god! Thank God.
And I was like, oh, what?
That's just fun.
It put a real smile on my face. It did. I was like, this is nice.
Oh man, no, listen. Sports is this thing that we all love and we enjoy. And, Henry often says, look, if you just want to tune out for 2 hours, although increasingly now more than 2 hours, 2.5 hours, 245 minutes, you don't have to think about these things. Fine. But they're making it harder and harder for you to not think about it because they keep making the game longer, shoving this shit down your throat. Like at some point, we as the consumers, right? And we can decide with our dollars, to answer Henry's point, we don't want to do this. Nope, not 7:16. Sorry, we're out.
Yeah, it's not working for me.
Will?
I watch them all on DVR, man. If I can.
Oh, it's so much better.
I'm gonna start. My game starts at 8:16.
Forget you guys, and I skip commercials. It's great.
Did the halftime show suck? I don't know.
Didn't watch
I haven't
it.
seen one in years. Yeah. Probably sucks. I'm gonna guess it sucks. Yeah.
Shout out to Red Panda, who's actually very good at all the.
Oh no, respect Red Panda.
Yeah, she's a great.
I meant the studio show.
Yeah, yeah. Those are. I mean, please, please. The True Hoop group chat that we have is often a fun place or even our calls that we have, because David will throw out something. We'll all throw out things that makes you think and wonder. And David, on our Monday content call, was talking about how, it's really important that as you draft players into the NBA, you need men in this league because the game is so physical, right?
This year, yeah.
And the funny thing is that if we talk to people, Henry, who we know who laud the 80s and 90s, they will tell us to our face that the game now is not physical. And I'm like, I'm not sure what you are watching, but turn on a game from today, watch it, and go turn on one of those 80s games and tell me which game is more physical. Yeah. And don't tell me about Kurt Rambis getting clotheslined by. I don't like. That's not whatever. That's the thing that they love to throw up. But so I'm like, that's not basketball.
It was a Marcus Johnson highlight reel that David sent around.
Yes,
and you can see, honestly, that was particularly shocking. But like, I think there were 2 or 3 plays on that clip. Maybe we could share this clip in the notes. But where the one defender back like just does that trick. I mean, this is a trick from like the dumbest part of the playground where he just like pretend you like lurch way left and then
Exactly.
just run away to the right.
Exactly.
Like, because like you're like, I don't want to play D at all. And like,
Exactly.
but like we kind of looked like you were like almost got it. And it's like, I'm like, oh my God, NBA players were just fake defending.
Yeah, fake hustle for sure. Rife with that. With that. And anyway, and he said, Jarod, you watch Memphis, like, Ja's a slight ability player. Like, what's going on? And I started thinking about that in a larger context. And I'm like, oh, you're right. He's been dealing with some injuries this year, the shoulder thing. And he didn't play back-to-back second game last night of a back-to-back. And he's ineligible for all NBA awards this year because he will not hit the 65-game mark. And he's playing fine, but this is a player, Henry, 2 seasons ago was All-NBA second team, was ascending. And then he had the gun situation, the big suspension, and the injury last year. And it made me think like, man, like the sort of like tenuous nature of like superstardom in this league and like how it's a razor's edge. And when you take away some of that youthful hubris and invincibility, how that could really fuck your game up a little bit. And again, I'm not here to like have Grizzlies fans freak out and be like, oh my God, he stinks now. That's not what I'm saying. It's just like, by all metrics you can make, he is not the best player on the Memphis Grizzlies. It's Jaren Jackson Jr., right? Like, and by a pretty good margin, right? Like, and I'm just like, man, like, how do we manage that, right? This is the human side now of the thing, right? The royal jelly, all the things that teams are so shitty at, right? Like, how do we manage the tenuous nature of superstardom? Because for this team to be at their best, he has to be like how he was with Jaren doing that. And that's right, for them to be the best versions of themselves, that's what needs to happen. And my God, their window, again, I'm not calling doomsday, but that may have already closed, Henry, which is wild.
Yeah, I think there's he's just got a job. I guess I don't think that being slight makes you injury prone. No. I think if you look at the least injured players, they will also be slight. It just depends on, well, in the P3 analysis, right, there's just different ways of movement and like
how you land and all that.
Yeah. If you're more kinematic, don't ask me to define that. You're less likely.
But you said it, and I know exactly what you mean by being kinematic. Yes.
There are definitely slight players who are less prone to injury and some who are more prone to injury. But I grew up watching Allen Iverson and covering the NBA when he was new, and he played a similar position and a similar body. And as the years went on, what they were doing backstage to get him ready for like the second half was like barbaric. I mean, he had so many. I know for a long time it was his elbow, but just it got really hard. And I think that there are a few players who play in the position, and Ja's chief among them, where if he's 100% like absurd levels of fury and attack, then he's good to go. And if he's at 85%, then a guy his size can't assault the rim, right? And whereas if you're Jaren Jackson Jr. at 85%, he can pretty much play his whole game 85%, right? On offense anyway. Defense is probably a different story. But so that's what size does, right? And so I feel like, throwing, this is like early Dwayne Wade, same thing, right? Where it's like, man, if you're willing to, if you feel, or Derrick Rose, if you feel completely invincible, then MVP or close, right? If you're feeling a little bit like you actually are, which is human, and with each they crash to the floor, into the floor with no pads or anything. It's like we act like it's nothing, but like
brutal.
It's really hard.
Oh, Henry,
it's like falling off your bike.
Nike told us it was nothing. They did a whole commercial campaign about how many times Dwayne Wade falls to the ground, he gets back up, and I'm like, don't know if that's good.
Like, it's good to think that way. It's good to delude yourself into invincibility because you need that delusion, right? But it's not true. Like hitting the floor fucking hurts, man. Like, and so I think Ja's hitting how many times do you think he's hit the floor? I don't know.
God,
500
at least.
At
least.
That's the problem.
Yeah,
he hit the floor 500 times. Like that's the deal. And they hit him in the head, and they hit him in the neck, and they hit him in the whatever. Like they hit him in the eye. Like this. Like we to us, it's just a moment, but it's not a moment. When you got to go home and go to sleep, I'm telling you, fall off your bike any day of your life.
Oh my God,
like
disaster.
I guarantee the forces are similar to Ja hitting the deck. Yeah. So I think the NBA means well in like calling a little less and making it a little more physical this year, but we'll pay the price. And Allen Iverson's peak was short.
Yeah, Yeah.
Derrick
And,
Rose's peak was very short.
yeah. And I mean, and you can see it because Ja, when he's driving into the lane, and because he's allowing a little more physicality, he's looking at the ref like, why isn't that a foul? They're not calling it. And then he's getting caught in the Luka situation, which I'm yelling at the ref. Well, great. Now we're down 4-on-5 on the other end and they're going to score. Right? Like, this is.
And when they didn't call it quite so tight, I mean, when they called it tight, he would go and challenge any big man and fly, and amazing things happen. And now, really, like, I'm sure that the advice would be for him to pull up in the second box and shoot a mid-range jumper. And somewhere, some assholes are like, "Oh yeah, it's good for the game." It's like, no,
but that's
No,
not that visceral moment that gets everybody like, this is why I love this thing.
Ja Morant can do. He's an absolute superhuman at this other thing that now we're like, don't do it.
I will say he did have a dunk on Wemby this year, even though it didn't count. So like he still will challenge on the time, but yeah, he doesn't do it as nearly. And he actually came out and said, he's like, keep trying to say, I got a dunk less this year. And he's like, yeah, because I'm gonna freaking die if I keep doing this.
When Ja Morant says I have to dunk less, like, alarm bells should go off.
Correct.
Everything has been administered incorrectly. In fact, they should remove every other thing he does.
Yes.
So that he can focus more on the thing he does. That's, I mean, the way he dunks to me is like, in addition to the jumping high and the running fast, it's just like the way he thinks through the acrobatics and adjusts in the air at maximum speed. I fucking love it. It's so exciting.
Watching him in full flight and full bloom is just gorgeous. And when he attacks the rim, as we say, with bad intentions, like, it's just
it's opera.
Yes,
it is opera.
This is the thing that, like, this is what gets you to love basketball.
Yeah.
To Henry's point, later and later we see less and less because I'm exhausted and I'm getting hurt. I can't do it. Guys, NBA, we want to see more of that, not less.
Like, and if I were his, like, personal coach in the summer, I'd be like, you know what we're going to work on is ref games. We're just going to work on. You just got to draw fouls all the time.
All the time.
Game gets so much shittier when that happens.
But it'll save your body.
Save his body. Win games.
Guess whose body is saved that is winning tons of and still playing good basketball, elite basketball, arguably on offense? James Harden.
Yeah.
Still got ref games.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Not going to jump over you.
Nope.
Yeah.
Certainly not. We're going to get you to commit fouls.
Yes. Yeah.
Henry, you are a Blazers fan, so I figured, you know what? Let's give Henry some time to do some Blazers talk.
Just put Blazers talk on the rundown.
Blazers talk. Like... Well, because look, the rebuild is clear, right? I think that's what the team's doing. But you're also winning, and I think they're trying to identify.
I just lost 3 in a row.
Oh, listen, beggars can't be choosers. You had a nice little run before that.
Yeah.
You're also identifying who are the players that are going to be here when it's really time to win. I don't know how old Tumani Kamara is. I know you like him a lot. I feel like he might be too old. Like, because I don't know how, in relation to Scoot. I don't know what Scoot's like. What, 20? Oh, no.
Scoot's 20.
How old is Tumani? Young. Oh, he's young too.
Yeah,
okay.
I forget, but he's 23, something like that.
Okay, so he's good. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You're going to have to get rid of one of Simons and one of those dudes, right? Because they're just kind of duplicative, maybe. I don't know what you're doing with DeAndre Ayton, Jeremy Grant. Like, those guys are going to be too old for sure. But you got some things happening in Portland. I know, it's exciting in some ways, some respects.
Oh, no, it's great. Oh, thank you for bringing up this very important topic, Jarod. The nation is desperate for more insight.
As listeners of this show know, David and I have rules. We don't talk about shitty teams. Generally, we do not. But we'll let Henry have some Blazers talk.
We can acknowledge Jarod got a little uncomfortable in the group chat there for a second when
it did. Henry's like, oh, we need your basketball analysis. He's like, I don't watch the Blazers. They stink. Like...
When the Blazers beat the Pacers, David was like, "Oh, the Pacers are just tired." It's like, well, at that point, like 8 out of the last 9 teams the Blazers played looked exactly that. Like, I don't think it was just that. I think, to me, the headline as a Blazer fan is I think that there are. A year ago, it was hard to say who on the roster was in fact a keeper, and now I think we're up to 4.
Yeah, you got some. Let's name those 4.
For me, I'm all in on Scoot at this point. Expecting him to be way better than he is now, but I think that he's got a lot going for him, and we could talk about it for the next several months if you want. I'm happy to do that. Tumani Kamara is already a super elite defender, and he's great. Most of all, he's an improver, which is my favorite thing. Denny Diaz always been a great player.
Yep.
He's just fantastic in this setting, and he's only 25. And then Donovan McClingan, who I think everybody's saying had 20 rebounds last night.
That's a lot of rebounds.
They weirdly, for a team that's rebuilding and interested in Cooper Flag, they just had a whole rash of injuries in the last 24 hours.
Weird how that happened.
But with DeAndre Ayton's sudden 4-week absence, Don McClingan's going to get a lot of minutes, and
which is good.
It is. I mean, it is. Like I think that there was something in the period where they were winning that was much more valuable than player development, which was just kind of like this love that was happening. Love of
They
the
were
sport.
competing defensively, and
like crazy. Yeah, so that's going to be the team. They're going to be a high tempo, defensive oriented,
I like
Denny of Dia bowling ball kind of team, which is great. We didn't know that before. Now we know that.
Imagine if you get Cooper. Man, that'd be so nice.
You can't let yourself think like that.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, you got it. Yeah,
You get what you get.
Yep.
Also, to be telling us so many years, the best pick is
not who everybody
or
says.
whatever. Like I did watch that Dick Vitale game, and I did watch Cooper Flag. But yeah, that'd be great. But there's a bunch of ways it could work out. There are a lot of good players. Shaedon Sharpe, I didn't even mention.
Yes, that's right, Shaedon.
That's 5.
So he right. So I was gonna say he's the keeper, and Anthony Simons is like, all right, we'll see you later.
Yeah, unfortunately, I honestly, it's like the other thing that really important that happened. I mean, Anthony Simons, I think, is like a championship team should have him as their like off the bench instant
6-man
offense.
Yes,
he can really heat it up.
He sure can.
13 made threes in a row is not common. He's a dunk champion.
Yep.
He can get to the rim. He's got a weird ability to score. He doesn't really like defense,
which is fine for your 6-man. It's okay.
Yeah. But I think that was the key part of this win streak was that Chauncey Billups pulled Shaedon aside and said, "Here you are in video playing crappy D," and Shaedon didn't really acknowledge it properly or change, and then he benched him. And he also benched Scoot for similar reasons, and then everyone took defense a lot more seriously, and that's when they got good. And I feel like that is where Shaedon just got off the Inferni path, and that's exactly where Shaedon becomes a more interesting prospect to me. He's also Shaedon's like freakishly.
Oh, I mean, an incredible athlete.
Potential.
David would love that story because, as he always says, playing time is like oxygen for these guys. So now I have no oxygen. I can't breathe. I better figure out how to get some oxygen. I got to start defending then. Shock of all shocks. You get back on the floor.
It's real coaching. I was very upset about how the Blazers hired Chauncey Billups, but now I'm also upset about how they're setting him up to fail. Where he's in they fired his brother, or let his brother go last summer. They could have renewed his contract and didn't. And then only very recently did Joe Cronin say anything publicly all year to support Chauncey Billups. Meanwhile, fans are booing him with every introduction.
I know, I heard that.
It feels kind of racist. And
you're like, everybody's a little bit racist.
But if you listen to the players, I feel like for me, like just listen to the players. It's very easy for them to say everybody played hard, but if they say, man, the coaches really had a great game plan, they're going way out of their way to tell the media, don't fire this coach, right? That's what they're saying. And that's what they're saying. So I don't, maybe there's a better coach, but I listen to Chauncey talk about how he sees player development, and I've seen these players improve under him, and he's really coaching. And to me, I'm like, be careful, Joe Cronin, if you think you got someone way better than this. Because I'm with you. I think Chauncey's a chance to be a very good coach if given the opportunity to succeed. And this is the stuff we talk about, right? The imaginations and the games that go on above that fans don't often think about, like what coaches get set up to fail. And it's just, look, I think they got a good thing going in Portland, and I hope they continue, but who the fuck knows what they're going to do? Trying to guess what these teams are going to do. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think they're going to hold tight to these, all the players they have who are 25 and younger and promising. And then they're just going to just see what goes, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I like it. Kind of fun. All right, folks, it's time. Top 5 time. Okay. Who are the 5 best teams? Oh, wait. I forgot. Before we get to top 5, congrats to Kevin Durant. Joined the 30,000 point club earlier this week. One of only 8 players in NBA history to have scored at least 30,000 points. Can you name all 8 players, Henry?
Oh, hell no.
You can guess though. I bet you'll guess at least half.
Okay, let's see. Michael Jordan.
Of course, easy.
Kareem.
Of course.
We need people with a lot of longevity here.
Well, the one with huge longevity is playing right now.
Oh, LeBron.
Of course.
Okay, that's 3.
Mm-hmm.
Larry Bird on the list?
Nope.
He didn't make it. Didn't play long enough. Oh, this is pathetic.
Long, of course, Kobe. That's 4.
Is it like Karl Malone?
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. Tim Duncan?
Nope. Think about all the NBA records in the early parts of the NBA. Just scored a ton of points. Had the most famous single game scoring record.
Oh, yeah. Wilt Chamberlain.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then a long-time player in the NBA for one franchise his whole career. You and I were in New York with him. That's right.
Yeah.
That's your 7, and then Durant makes 8.
See, told you I knew it. That's a very exclusive club, though.
I mean, it is the exclusive of the exclusive clubs, right? Like, Jesus Christ.
Think about how many megastars are not in that club.
This is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I will say for Kevin, remember, he missed 2 seasons, one with the Achilles and then one with the Jones fracture.
Yeah.
Imagine that doesn't happen. He's probably at 36. We're like, oh, when's he going to get to 40? Right? Then it's just him and LeBron at 40,000, right? Like, which is fucking crazy. But kudos. All right, Henry. Top 5 time. Who is on your number 5 line?
I had the Memphis Grizzlies.
I have the Denver Nuggets.
Okay.
Who's on your 4 line?
Denver Nuggets.
Memphis Grizzlies.
Okay. That might be our only difference.
3.
Actually, I put the Celtics number 3.
As did I.
Okay.
2.
Cavaliers.
Of course. And then OKC 1.
Yep.
I asked this to David when he was on. Henry, you even went a step further, and I'll let you say it here. What are the chances someone out of the top 5 wins the NBA championship this year?
I really feel like it's like 1%.
And it's going to have to be like some major injury happens to multiple teams right, for that. Okay. And now, you even said, it's only a top 5. It's really the top 3. What are the chances someone outside of the top 3 wins a championship?
It just feels to me like we're 80% in the top 3, right?
Okay.
Like it's going to be the Thunder, the Cavs, or the
Celtics.
It feels to me. Yeah. Now, look, last year the Mavericks surprised us all, right? Like, I want to acknowledge those things happen, but as far as actually winning the thing, I'll be totally honest, Jarod. I think the Thunder are going to win. I feel like every other thing is. I feel like the Thunder are like 55% to win. Right now, they're so good.
Everything, the way they stack up metrically, everything is pointing towards that, right?
Yeah.
Like it just, and the versatility they have positionally, their culture and how they play defense, the multiple efforts, all of the things.
Aaron Wiggins is dropping
40 something points in games. You're like, what the and Chet Holmgren's played like 3 games. Like yes, and SGA is MVP of the league for sure. I would love to see a Cavs Celtics Eastern Conference Finals, and that'd be wonderful.
So good, yeah.
And then whoever emerges from that versus what we assume will be OKC. As David said, look, the top teams in the West are happy that Luka and the Mavs are no longer a thing, because the way Luka is able to, like LeBron in his prime, control an entire playoff series because of the way he dominates the ball in a controlled tempo, and he can make every possible pass known to man and every shot known to man. That's often hard to overcome no matter how good your team is, but that doesn't exist anymore, right? Like he's now in LA with, a team that's not really quite constructed for that. So yeah, I think OKC for sure. The way they're looking right now, it's hard to bet against them. I'll give Denver a chance. I'll give Memphis a chance, but that's really it.
We haven't had the real test yet, but the hurdles that OKC has encountered so far, it's like, oh, here's a big test. And like everyone, and they just like fly 20 points above the hurdle. And it's like, oh,
they're crushing. And look, and we all know regular season playoffs completely different when everybody's scouting and knows what you're running. And now it's like, oh, J-Dub, now you have to consistently do that against like people who are locked in and know your counters and all that. Yes, of course they have to. We got to see it over, but I'm leaning that way. I'm
not skeptical. Yeah, I'm like, I think they're fucking great. Is what I think. Yeah.
All right, folks, enjoy the weekend. Enjoy All-Star break. We will be back next Thursday, and we'll have basketball to talk about. Take care.
Happy Valentine's Day.